Maya Collins stared at the cream envelope that slid under her door like a threat, and her breath snagged. She said, "Wrong address, right?" But her name was embossed in gold beside Ethan Ward's. The venue read Harborview Chapel, Saturday, noon. The bride was Olivia Hart. She said, "No," and the word felt like glass in her mouth. The air in her apartment turned thin as paper while the city hummed outside, indifferent. She remembered Ethan's last text, "Busy tonight, big meeting," and tasted metal. Her phone trembled in her palm as she called him, praying for a stupid prank. It rang and rang, then died into voicemail with his easy laugh, a cruel echo. She said, "Ethan, call me now," and tried to steady her voice, but it shook like a leaf. The ribbon on the invitation came loose, a soft whisper of silk, and the world tilted. She felt the floor tilt back, then tilt again, as if truth had tides. She whispered, "This is a mistake," but the ink did not smudge. Maya set the invitation on the table as if it might explode, and the room held its breath. She said, "Think," because thinking felt safer than feeling. She remembered Ethan promising, "I can't wait to marry you," in that warm tone that softened her bones. She replayed it, hoping the memory would fix reality. Her notes for a weekend trip stared back like mute witnesses. She said, "We booked cabins, right?" and laughed once, a dry spark in a cold grate. She opened her laptop, searched the venue, and found a glossy photo of the chapel like a postcard from a nightmare. The date matched the card, bold as a bruise. She whispered, "How long have you been planning this?" to no one who would answer. The radiator clicked and clicked, a metronome for dread. She pressed her palms to the tabletop until the edges bit skin. She said, "He will explain," and tried to believe it. Belief staggered, then crawled beneath the door. Maya called again, then again, and the third call hit voicemail so fast it felt intentional. She said, "Pick up," and listened to his recorded laugh like a stranger wearing his face. She texted, "Emergency, call me," and watched the bubbles never appear. The clock on the stove blinked midnight, and the building's pipes groaned like old bones. She said, "Jenna will know what to do," and scrolled to her best friend's name with shaking thumbs. Jenna answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "What's wrong?" Maya said, "I got a wedding invitation," and let the pause tear the air. Jenna said, "Yours?" and Maya said his to another woman. The silence hurt worse than noise. Jenna said, "I'm coming over," without asking if she should. Maya glanced at the door, as if it might open with a miracle. The rain settled into a steady hiss, like static over truth. 20 minutes later, Jenna Brooks thudded in with an umbrella dripping like a shaken dog, and the apartment warmed by inches. Jenna said, "Show me," and Maya handed her the card as if passing a blade. Jenna read once, then twice, and her mouth hardened. Jenna said, "We breathe, then we verify," and placed the card flat, pinning a corner with her finger. Maya said, "He'll say it's a mix-up," but her voice knew better. Jenna opened her tablet, searched guest lists, florist posts, anything public, hunting like a surgeon. She said, "If this is real, there will be traces." Maya stared at the ribbon and imagined it around her throat. Jenna said, "We're not spiraling, we're gathering facts." Maya nodded, grateful for the scaffolding of action. She said, "I trusted him," and the words shook loose like stones from a wall. Jenna squeezed her wrist, steady as a metronome. Memory crashed in, uninvited, citrus-scented, and golden. Maya and Ethan had stood on a rooftop last week, city lights pooling like coins. Ethan said, "Next summer, I promise," and tucked a curl behind her ear. She said, "Promise what?" And he smiled, surprised with that boyish grin that sold futures. They shared fries out of a paper cup while a band downstairs tried a love song and failed. He said, "You're my only," and the night agreed for them. Back in the present, the line snapped and the rooftop dropped away. Maya said, "Did you practice lying?" and hated how small she sounded. The clock ticked louder, making space for anger to enter and sit. She said, I will see this through, and felt the words root. Jenna said, then we plan. The rain, the lamp, the ribbon, the ring box, everything listed into a new gravity. Morning pried the blinds apart, and found Maya sitting where the dark left her. She said, keep breathing, and folded the invitation into a square that would not stay small. Coffee steamed like a warning flare, and tasted burned. Jenna said, we'll build a plan, and opened a notebook with a soft, decisive snap. Ow. She drew 3 lines, labeled truth, proof, and exit. Maya said, I wanted a life, not a case file, and rubbed her eyes until sparks danced. Jenna said, you still get a life, but we start with facts. The city horns below argued about everything and nothing. Maya scrolled photos of Ethan, smiling, and felt the floor slip again. She said, if he's innocent, he'll help us prove it, and hated the tremor. Jenna said, then we test him. Hope stepped forward and fear tugged it back. Maya nodded and let the day begin. By noon, Maya stood outside Ethan's office tower where glass held sky like a hostage. She said, 5 minutes, and stepped into the lobby that smelled of lemon and money. The receptionist smiled with careful politeness and said, he's in meetings. Maya showed the invitation, and the smile lost balance. The receptionist said, do you want to leave a message? And Maya heard the script straining. She said, tell him I'm here about his wedding, and the words turned iron. Security badges blinked past like indifferent stars. An elevator chimed and stayed shut. Maya said, I live with him, and watched the lie warp the woman's eyes. The receptionist said, I'll check again, and typed with unnecessary force. The lobby clock moved 1 minute, and the air cooled several degrees. Maya felt visible and invisible at once. Jenna met her at a diner where the vinyl seats held a decade of secrets. Oh, she said, you were right to push, and slid across a plate of fries like a peace offering. Maya said, they knew something, and watched ketchup bloom. Jenna said, then we widened the circle and opened her tablet to public records. She searched licenses, venues, social posts, and vendor tags. Maya said, I hate that I know these tricks, and traced the rim of her water glass. A wrist reel showed Olivia Hart's bouquet, tagged at Harborview, date intact. Jenna said, there's our proof of planning, and saved the link. Maya said, he promised next summer, and heard her voice harden. The jukebox tried an old love song, and lost the key. Jenna said, keep eating, keep digging, and the fries finally tasted like fuel. Ethan finally called as clouds bruised the evening. He said, babe, wild mix-up. Some vendor spam used my name, smooth as lacquer. Maya said, the chapel confirmed your date, and let silence do its cutting. He laughed too quickly and said, they book placeholders. It's a clerical thing. She said, then meet me now, and fix it together. He sighed like a man inconvenienced by fire and said, I'm slammed tomorrow morning. Jenna mouthed, record, and slid her phone closer. Maya said, say you're not marrying Olivia Hart, and counted heartbeats. He said, I love you, that's what matters, and avoided the name like glass. She said, names matter, and ended the call before the charm could spread. The room steadied around the new shape of his voice. Night gathered, and would not leave. Jenna said, we set the test, and wrote a list that clicked like a lock. She outlined meeting times, cross calls, venue confirmations, and a drive-by if needed. Maya said, if he's clean, he'll stand in daylight, and felt the sentence lift her spine. Jenna said, if he's not, we stop bleeding time, and slid the list to her. Maya added, I bring the ring, and the words tasted like iron. She placed the box in her pocket, and felt its weight argue. Jenna said, you are not the one on trial, and held her stare until breath returned. Maya said, I still want to believe, and let belief sit, small, but alive. Outside, rain stitched the city back together, one thin seam at a time. Morning stretched thin as gauze, while Maya sorted laundry, and found a receipt curled like a secret. She said, Bayside Brasserie, 2 entrees, champagne, and felt her pulse step wrong. The date was last Friday, during his supposed business dinner. She said, he hates oysters, yet the receipt bragged about them. A second slip listed a hotel bar she had never seen. She said, room charge comped, and her mouth dried. Jenna said, photograph everything, and steadied the paper with 2 fingers. Maya snapped images, hands shaking just enough to blur truth. She said, if I ask, he will twist, and heard herself brace. Jenna said, we don't ask, we verify, and began a quiet ledger of lies. The apartment seemed to tilt, aligning everything to a new, colder north. They traced the receipt to a waterfront cafe, where gulls heckled the tide. The barista glanced at the screen and said, yes, Ethan Ward, corner booth. Maya said, was he alone? And watched a flinch cross the girl's eyes. The barista said, red-headed woman, pretty bouquet on the seat, and regret flushed her cheeks. Maya said, did she say her name? And the register beeped like a warning. The barista whispered, Olivia, as if the name might cut. Jenna said, thank you, and slid a generous tip like a bandage. Maya stared at the corner booth, imagining laughter placed like knives. She said, he brought flowers for her, and heat washed cold away. Jenna said, we keep moving, and steered them back into the wind. Back home, the shared tablet chimed with a cloud sync like a door left ajar. Maya opened photos and found a hidden album named Work. She said, he is not subtle, and tapped. A burst of images showed menus, blurred faces, and a hand with a delicate emerald ring. She said, zoom, and the finger's nail polish matched Olivia's reel. They saved. A screenshot of directions to Harborview sat like a confession. Jenna said, capture timestamps, and started a folder labeled fireproof. Maya said, he will say this is business, and anger rose like storm heat. She scrolled to a deleted thread, half recovered by auto backup. One message read, can't wait to see you in white. She said nothing, because the words had already finished speaking. Jenna laid the evidence out like a crime board without the string. She said, receipts, venue, ring map, and the name, and checked each box. Maya said, add the call where he dodged Olivia, and pressed her lips flat. Jenna said, pattern established, and wrote it in bold. The room held a courtroom hush that made every breath sound loud. Maya said, I want him to tell the truth while I can still bear it. Jenna said, then we staged the daylight test and outlined it again, step by step. Maya rehearsed a calm voice that felt like someone else's. She said, no accusations, just facts, and her hands finally still. The ledger of lies looked complete, but her heart kept adding margins. Ethan answered on the first ring, voice polished like showroom chrome. He said, let's drop the drama, as if kindness were costly. Maya said, meet me at Harborview Steps at 10, bring your calendar, and left no room. He said, you're being paranoid, and shifted to the gentle register that used to melt doors. Maya said, if I'm wrong, I'll apologize in front of the clerk, and heard silence stretch. He said, I can't make tomorrow, and stacked excuses like cards. Maya said, then I'll meet Olivia, and the deck collapsed. He barked, do not contact her, and rage flashed through the polish. Maya said, see you at 10, and ended the call before he could sand the edges. The phone felt lighter than it should, and so did she. Harborview glowed with lanterns as Maya stood across the street, heart hammering louder than traffic. She said, if he comes, it's truth or ruin. 10 minutes late, Ethan appeared, coat-sharp smile, aimed for cameras. Then, Olivia stepped out of a rideshare, bouquet in hand, laughter spilling like it belonged. Maya said, so it's real, and the words scorched her throat. She watched him lean to kiss Olivia's cheek, tenderness rehearsed to perfection. The chapel doors reflected their figures, a future painted without her. Maya whispered, this is the wedding, and her knees wavered, but she stayed. Maya moved closer, breath cutting the air, and watched Olivia touch Ethan's arm with easy familiarity. She said she doesn't know she's stealing, but doubt Claude. What if she did? Olivia's voice carried, "Next week feels unreal," and Maya almost staggered. Ethan replied, "It's perfect, just us," words once promised to her. Maya said. He recycled them, and bile rose sharp. She pressed against the chapel gate, nails biting rust, and realized she was the ghost at her own wedding. The ring box in her pocket felt heavier, as if it now belonged to a stranger. Maya stepped into their line of sight, and Ethan's smile snapped like brittle glass. She said, "Tell her, Ethan," voice steady despite trembling ribs. Olivia blinked, confused, then studied Maya with curiosity, not recognition. Ethan said, "She's mistaken, just a client," his tone practiced. Maya laughed once, sharp and empty, and said, "Your client wears the ring you hid in my drawer." Olivia looked down, her hand tightening over emerald fire. The silence became courtroom air again. Maya said, "Say her name, and say mine," and the streetlight hummed like a witness. A voice cut through, "I told you she'd find out." An outsider, Daniel, Ethan's coworker, stood near the curb, holding photos like blades. He said, "You thought you could juggle 2 lives forever?" and tossed the envelope. Maya caught it. Inside were candid shots, Ethan with Olivia, dates, hotel receipts. Ethan said, "Stay out of this," but desperation cracked his tone. Maya flipped through proof after proof, each heavier than the last. Olivia whispered, "You told me she was your cousin," and color drained from her face. Maya said no more lies left, and her voice felt like iron doors closing. Maya held the photos like a verdict, and the street noise dimmed. She said, "The invitation wasn't a mistake, it was a confession," and her hands steadied for the first time. Ethan said, "I can explain," but his words sounded thin, already breaking. Olivia stepped back, bouquet dropping, petals scattering like evidence. She said, "You promised me honesty," and her voice fractured. Maya looked at them both, then said, "You built 2 homes on sand, and they're drowning together." Ethan's face drained of charm, leaving only fear. The night sealed it. The double life was dead in the open. Maya pushed through Ethan's apartment door, storm at her back, proof in her bag. She said no more running, and dropped the photos across the table like knives. Ethan said, "You shouldn't barge in," but his voice lacked its polish. Maya said, "You've stolen years, Ethan," and the walls seemed to lean closer. He tried to gather the pictures, but his hands shook, scattering them further. She said, "Every receipt, every message, every lie," and forced him to look. His eyes flickered, charm searching for a foothold, but none remained. The room held its breath, waiting for him to break. Ethan rose, eyes glassy, and said, "You don't understand, I love you both." The sentence fractured the air. Maya laughed once, harsh and hollow. She said, "Love isn't a split check." He moved closer, hands reaching as if to hold her still, but she stepped back. Ethan's tone cracked. "I never meant to hurt you," yet his jaw twitched with rage. Maya said, "You practiced hurting me every day you lied." His voice climbed. "I gave you everything," and the walls shook. She said, "Accept the truth," and her calm felt like fire. Maya yanked open a drawer, pulling hidden letters tied with twine, and slammed them onto the counter. She said, "You hid them here in our home." Ethan lunged, but she spread them wide. 2 names, 2 addresses, 2 lives. She said, "A man rehearses lies like this," and her voice shook the glass. Ethan said, "I was protecting us," the phrase brittle as paper. Maya tore open one letter, promises to Olivia about summers by the sea. She said, "I was your shadow," and heat burned her chest. Ethan's mouth opened, but no words followed. Silence screamed. A sharp knock rattled the air, and Olivia stepped inside, bouquet absent, fury replacing perfume. She said, "Tell me she's lying," voice trembling. Ethan froze, cornered by the 2 worlds colliding. Maya said, "Show her the letters," and shoved them toward Olivia. Olivia scanned one, face cracking, then another, until her hands shook. She said, "You called me your salvation," and her voice broke. Maya said, "He called me his only." Ethan begged, "Stop, both of you," but the tide had turned. The lies stood taller than him now. The storm inside matched the rain outside, uncontainable. Maya shouted, "You built kingdoms of lies and crowned us fools." Olivia hurled the letters at him, pages scattering like white flames. Ethan dropped to his knees, clutching air, words drowned by their fury. Maya said, "I am not broken, I am free," and the sentence cut through the noise. Olivia whispered, "And I am done," and turned away, her heels sharp on the floor. Ethan looked up, face hollow, reaching for nothing. Maya stood taller, breathing fire and ruin. The roof of lies had finally blown away. Morning arrived like a quiet witness, while boxes lined the hallway, and dust mapped old corners. Maya said, "Label kitchen fragile," and her marker squeaked like a tiny alarm. Jenna said, "We take what's ours, nothing that lies," and folded another flap shut. Maya ran a cloth over the counter where dinners had pretended to be love. She said, "Goodbye to the version of me who waited," and tied a knot in twine. The key sat on the table, bright as a decision. Jenna said, "You can leave it or throw it," and gave her space to choose. Maya said, "It stays, I don't," and slipped her coat on with new shoulders. The door clicked, softer than she expected, yet final as a gavel. The hallway smelled like rain and freedom, a hard mix she could breathe. The sublet smelled like fresh paint and possibility, and the windows opened to noisy, honest streets. Maya said, "Start small," and set a mug, a plant, and her notebook on a clean shelf. Jenna said, "Routines are bridges," and penciled a calendar square for sleep and walks. Maya brewed coffee that did not remember him, and let the steam fog her glasses. She said, "I will eat, and I will rest," like vows meant for survival. The radiator ticked, kind rather than cruel. Jenna said, "Therapy at 4, I'll drive," and the word therapy felt like oxygen. Maya smiled without cracking and said, "Thank you for catching me mid-fall." The room answered with quiet that did not accuse. A home was beginning where a life could fit. Her phone lit with Ethan's name so many times it looked like a lighthouse begging ships to crash. He said in voicemail, "I need to explain," and the need sounded hungry, not sorry. Maya typed nothing, and let the message settle into archived silence. She said, "You do not get my peace," and the floor beneath her felt steadier. Jenna said, "Block if you must," and placed a bowl of soup beside her notebook. Maya listened to rain and her own breathing until they matched. She said, "My quiet is valuable," and saved it like money. Another call arrived and died without ceremony. The apartment did not change shape when she refused him. She had expected thunder, but the sky rewarded her with calm. In therapy, words unfurled like bandages, clean and stinging, necessary and new. Maya said, "He rebranded lies as love," and heard how precise the sentence was. The therapist nodded and said, "You kept yourself alive while searching the fire." Maya traced a plan for her deferred ambitions, the ones she folded to make room for him. She said, "Graduate courses, savings, a solo trip, not someday but dates, and ink met paper." Her chest loosened where resentment had nested. The therapist said, "Grief is honest work. Give it wages and hours." Maya said, "I am worth careful time," and felt a door inside unlock. When she left, the evening smelled like wet pavement and second chances. She walked slower on purpose, learning her name again. Night found her at the Riverwalk where the city kept its oldest stories in the tide. Maya said, "Here is what survives," and opened her palm to the ring box weight. She did not throw it. She placed it on the railing and stepped back, refusing drama's bait. She said, "I choose quiet endings," and watched the water carry streetlights like coins. Jenna's text read, "Proud of you," and pride finally felt like a garment that fit. Maya whispered, "I am not what he broke. I am what I keep," and warmth rose despite the wind. She turned her back on the river without flinching. The path ahead looked ordinary, and therefore beautiful. She walked home, lighter by exactly one future she no longer wanted. Maya's phone buzzed at dawn with a message long as a confession. Ethan wrote, "I was scared, I was stupid, I need you," but the words bled with desperation, not love. She stared at the screen, the apartment still dark, coffee cooling untouched. She said, "You needed control, not me," and her chest no longer cracked at his name. The city outside stirred awake, indifferent to his begging. Jenna's note on the fridge read, "Breakfast later," and its small kindness outweighed his flood of excuses. Maya whispered, "Your words used to define me, but now they shrink," and pressed the screen dark. Silence hummed, protective and clean. Another message arrived an hour later. "Please, meet me once, I'll fix it." Maya said, "Fix implies something survives," and deleted it without flinching. Her finger hovered steady over the block option, then pressed. She felt the phone lighten in her hand, as if wires of guilt snapped free. She said, "I am not his audience," and her shoulders rolled back, releasing years of weight. Outside, church bells rang for a stranger's wedding, reminding her that vows could still belong to truth. She whispered, "Let that be theirs, not mine," and set the phone down like closing a door. Her phone rang again, but this time, the name read Olivia. Maya hesitated, then answered, "Breath, Shaw." Olivia said, "He lied to both of us," her tone shredded. Maya said, "I know," steady as stone. Olivia whispered, "I thought I was chosen," and silence flooded the line. Maya said, "We were both props in his story," and her voice carried steel under sorrow. Olivia exhaled a broken laugh, then said, "He doesn't deserve either of us." Maya replied, "No, he never did." For the first time, the ache in her chest felt shared, lighter for being witnessed. Later that evening, Olivia arrived with no bouquet, only tired eyes and folded arms. They sat at Maya's table, two strangers bound by betrayal. Maya said, "He thrived on secrets," and Olivia nodded, "And he starved us of truth." The silence between them was not hostile but heavy. They shared fragments, dates, phrases, promises, discovering the symmetry of his lies. Maya said, "We lost him, but maybe we gained honesty," and Olivia's shoulders eased for the first time. The kettle whistled, and they drank tea in fragile peace. For once, Ethan's name was absent from the room. Near midnight, Maya stood on the balcony with the wedding invitation in hand, its gold letters dulled by shadow. She said, "You were meant to bind me, but you freed me." She struck a match, flame licking the corner, curling paper into ash. Olivia watched silently from the doorway, no words needed. The ashes lifted on a breeze and scattered over the street, fragments of a life erased. Maya whispered, "This chapter is closed," and her voice did not tremble. The night air smelled of smoke and rain, final and clean. She turned back inside, lighter than she had ever been.